All right, we are good to go. We have a quorum for this meeting. All right, number 3 on the agenda is public input. Just want to remind everybody that
Approve the minutes.
Minutes approval.
skipping ahead, sorry. Let's approve the meeting minutes from April 12th. Sorry.
Make a motion to approve the minute meetings from April 12th, 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's passed. Public input. Any person as a member, not a member of the building committee can address the committee. We ask that you fill out a form in advance and keep it to an agenda item that is listed on our agenda today. And to also keep the comment period to a period of 5 minutes. So is there anybody that would like to address the committee?
We're gonna.
Tom?
It's not on the agenda. So he gave us his input.
Got the material on the website. I had some ideas to getting the public to understand our situation. That's material. There was a one of the concerns about moving forward that was expressed in the material that's on the website is that we need to get the public to understand our situation to pass the bond. I had some ideas on
Okay.
doing that, so I wanted to present those.
That's
But-
great.
I can come back next time. I mean, it's not a big thing. If I'm not,
Is out of sequence.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Tom, what we'd like to do is,
Fine,
can you,
okay.
we have your email address, right?
I'll
I
give it to
think
you.
I have your email address from before. So I'll get your email address before we leave today.
Okay.
And then we'll put this on the agenda because it is valuable. We'll send it
Fair enough.
around to the team.
Okay.
All right, thank
That's
you.
good.
All right. Anybody else? That's all we got.
Right.
All right. Update on conceptual layouts of new middle high school.
Matt.
That's me.
Afternoon, Matt.
Good evening. How is everybody? I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So what we're going to show you today is reflective of where we are in the conceptual design in terms of getting the space program as far along as we can at this point. The space program is always something that evolves over quite a long period. Even after we're well into design, there's usually minor tweaks being made to it. But the goal at this stage is to get it firmed up enough where we can move forward with some confidence about the size and general organization of the building. So we've been working with the educational programming group over the last several weeks, and we meet once a week. We've been reviewing the space program kind of section by section, and just making sure that we capture everything that we've heard in some of the teacher meetings and the interviews with the school administration, and understanding what the priorities are. And so we've pretty much gotten through the whole thing, and there's still work to be done to scrutinize where we are with square footage versus what the RIDE guideline will give you in maximizing your reimbursement. And also tied into that is the demographic study, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. And that's still, we're still reviewing that. So just as a snapshot of where we are, based on a program that's in the range of 1,000 students, and it could be more or could be less. I'll step you through the kind of major program areas so you can kind of see what the project consists of at this point. And going forward, we'll update you on major changes that are made to that. And we're trying to look at how we can take advantage of being a middle school and a high school combined in realizing the most efficiency that we can in the space of the building. The space programs here do not include any district office square footage. And that's something that's been talked about as part of the master planning process. So at this stage, we're not counting on including that. And I'm going to walk you through each of the kind of major sections. So we'll look at the core academic spaces, which are really the classrooms, the science rooms, any of the instructional rooms, and outside of the classroom kind of learning areas. So these diagrams represent the volumes of spaces that we're talking about for the middle school, the high school, and then the portions of core academic spaces that are shared between the two or could be shared between the two. The middle school is arranged with core classrooms in clusters. And in general, we're looking at 6 of these general classrooms per grade through both the middle and high school. And that on top of that are 6 science labs for the middle school and 6 science labs for the high school. And in addition to those core classrooms, there are health classrooms and ELL classrooms at a smaller level. And in addition to those, there are project areas and teacher planning spaces for each team or cluster or at each grade level. So throughout the building, you will see, as you saw in Saugus, it's similar. The idea is that there's project-based learning spaces that are open and outside of the classroom. There are enclosed teacher planning rooms, but distributed through the school. As well, in addition to those spaces distributed throughout the clusters are small group rooms of various sizes. These are rooms that teachers can pull students out of their regular classrooms to get specialist instruction, or they could, specialists could meet together in those rooms, or students could collaborate in those rooms outside of the regular classroom. Moving on to kind of the specials spaces in the school, which consist of the special education rooms, art and music rooms, and the career tech spaces. So the red are special education, yellow art and music, and the lavender is the career tech. There's a variety of special needs spaces that have been identified, both in the middle and the high school. Most of those are specific to their schools. There are some resource areas that could be shared between the two. In the art and music, we have a dedicated art room for the middle school. We have 2 dedicated art rooms for the high school. We have a band and chorus room, and we're currently looking at the most efficient way of accommodating that with other spaces, including the stage in the auditorium, and to realize the kind of most efficient quantity of space there. But right now, middle school has the kind of greatest need for band and chorus, and there is a music room and some storage spaces for musical instruments. High school can utilize the auditorium for their needs for the most part, and they have some of their own storage spaces. Then at the career tech level, we're still, this is still a subject where the 4th pathway is to be defined, but we have some ideas based on discussions that have happened so far. We're carrying as placeholders a large shop size space that could accommodate a 4th pathway program. In addition to that, we have a kind of medium size shop like space based upon something like the wood shop that is existing today, as well as 4 smaller lab type spaces, which would accommodate any and all of those programs. Some of the programs may also utilize regular classroom spaces based upon scheduling for the kind of more instructional parts of their program. And moving on to the media center, dining, and auditorium spaces. So we have separate cafeterias for the middle school and the high school. They're sized for 3 lunch periods each school. The middle school cafeteria has a stage attached to it, so a cafetorium kind of setup that is available for assembly use at the middle school. And then the stage itself could be devised so that it could be closed off from the cafeteria with a partition and used for other instructional purposes, such as chorus or band. We have a centralized kitchen between the two and a centralized staff lunch space, which is serving both the middle school and high school faculty. There's also a shared chair storage room between the two. We have separate media center spaces for the middle school and the high school with a shared office space between them. So these would likely be co-located so that they could, the librarians could share resources. Then at the auditorium, this is sized to accommodate 2/3 of the population of the high school, which is a kind of RIDE standard, and includes a full stage with support spaces along with those. Then at the administration level, we were talking about the administration offices, the medical offices, and guidance and counseling spaces. There are separate administrative suites for the middle school and high school to be located close to the entrance to those schools. Then separate medical and nurses offices for the middle school and high school. And then finally, separate guidance offices for the middle school and high school. The high school has a slightly larger suite of offices based on their career kind of counseling spaces. Then lastly, we're looking at health and PE spaces, so the physical education, and then custodial and maintenance spaces. At the middle school, there are health rooms and offices and locker rooms dedicated to the middle school. Then at the high school level, there is a health room, offices, and locker rooms for the high school purposes. Locker rooms at the high school are sized to accommodate full teams, whereas the middle school ones are smaller and are geared towards the PE use only. And then we've talked about this a bit, but the gym itself is organized so that there's one space with 3 teaching areas within it and can be divided through curtains or partitions to create division between the middle school and the high school uses, but can also be opened up for larger uses, games, etc. And then for custodial spaces, there's an array of more kind of storage and back of house spaces. Some of them are gathered around the receiving area for the combined school, and some of them are distributed throughout the school. Are there any questions or comments on the space program before I move on to the next topic?
Yeah, Matt, this is Don. Just for clarification, so the block diagrams give us a perspective of relative size to one another. So there's some scale that you used for each of these blocks?
That's right. So the images that you see here are all at the same scale, so they're relative to each other.
Right.
And as well as the height. So these taller ones represented double height spaces versus the lower ones, which are single story.
Got it. And then you said the auditorium is 2/3 of the high school population per RIDE guidelines, but you also have a cafetorium. Is there Is that the preference from administration versus, oh, what is there, let me ask a different question. Is there an option for a large auditorium and no cafetorium, or is that just not being, do you not, go ahead.
To create a cafetorium, you're essentially just using the space of the cafeteria that's already given and making it double function. The only additional space is the space of the stage, which is 1,000 square feet. So there's nothing, only the 1,000 square feet could be taken and made for a larger auditorium if that
Got it.
was
That's what I was
desired.
asking. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
But it gives
At
them-
this point, we've heard from the principals that the way we have it is it fits their needs.
Okay, actually, and one last question. You mentioned district offices are not included. I think that's a question for us at some point.
No, they're not included in the middle.
I know,
school, high
but I'm
school.
saying I think it's a question for us long-term. Is there a time frame when we would have to have a plan for having them off this site, or are we not concerned about that?
I think we are concerned about it, but not for the purposes of this bond.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And if you desire it, we could price it in both scenarios. One thing we talked about was getting a cost for it to be included here, getting a cost for it to be included with the 4-5 at the high school, potentially. So you'd have a comparison for conversation and discussion.
Yeah, it probably makes sense to at least have an idea of what the cost would be and then, yeah.
Yep.
I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah, it's easy enough to do, a cost per square foot takeoff on that.
Right, and that is not ride reimbursable, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Boy, we want it out of the-
Do you see, Matt, somewhat a consolidation of the custodial maintenance, like in the building? Like, are we, I know seeing some of the other schools that we went and toured, I understand why we want to keep like some offices separate and nurses stations separate. I think they're generally going to be in the same area, just separated, correct? But as far as custodial maintenance, isn't there an opportunity here to really combine those to cover both schools?
Yeah, we imagine that there is one custodial team and they would have a centralized area of the building where their spaces, their dedicated spaces are located and are shared. The parts that would be distributed are things like custodial closets, so that we're ensuring that each part of the building has something within, a reasonable distance for servicing those areas of the building.
Thank you.
Okay. So let me move on. Where we are with the demographics report. So we've got the draft report from Cropper GIS. We've reviewed it with the educational programming group and especially with Rosemary and Michelle. That review happened about a week ago. And out of that, we identified several questions that we had and pieces of information that need to be followed up on. So right now, and I think we've collected a lot of it. We are collecting some more data, and in particular, we're looking at providing them with mid-year enrollment data to create a more complete picture, because of what happens here in Middletown is unique, where they start out the school year with one population, but then they hit more bumps throughout the year, mainly due to the military families coming throughout the year. So that's an important part to make sure that is reflected correctly. So we're in the process of getting that fed back into the analysis. We're also getting the numbers for the Transitions Academy population because that wasn't included. So that will add a few students. We're trying to confirm what the expanded CTE programs would do from an out of district projections going forward. We want to make sure that's captured as well. And then lastly, there was, we noticed that there is a dip in some of the projections that kind of worked its way through over the years. And it turns out that's due to COVID, that some students left and haven't come back, but over time will come back. And that's something that Cropper has talked about them seeing in other areas, in other districts. So if RIDE is basically going to pick a projected number at some point out 5 years, if that dip coincides with that 5-year projection, then it kind of artificially makes it look lower. So there's some question about how they will look at it, and if we can get them to accept that there's an anomaly that's happened and look at a broader picture. So that's where we are with that.
Matt, have you, like, our community is so, and it's unique with the military presence here. Like, there's a lot of talk that goes on about, like, so what does RIDE really, is it this report that you're discussing here? That's the final number that they're going to look for demographics? Because I think there's a lot of talk about adding more and more Navy families and other military families as well. But I'm trying to factor this in, making sure we cover everything here.
Yeah, we have also, it's not listed as a bullet point, but we have talked about future plans for the military, and Rosemary's had discussions with them about what they project will, what those increases will be, and they've talked about 10%, and we're passing that information along to Cropper. It's not clear yet how they would take that without real hard data behind it, which is kind of difficult because the military doesn't necessarily share very specific numbers. So the question about what RIDE will do, and Manuel, feel free to jump in here, but I think they tend to just take the report at its face value and kind of rely upon that. But there is a chance to have discussions with them about it.
Yeah, I'll jump in just really quickly. Again, this is Manuel Cordero with Civic. So just on a couple of quick things. So I was able to check in with Chief Mario Carreño today, actually, specifically about this issue of the middle school dip. And you can actually kind of see it in the enrollment numbers here, that the kind of dip in that 6-8 number happens to be in the kind of 5th year. Yep, over there, exactly. So they are actually willing to consider a different number, but the demographer actually has to point out that it's an anomaly, and as such, it's not a good planning number. So that's kind of breaking news, at least on our end. So we're going to be sharing that with the demographer. So that's good news for the project. And then the other good piece of news is that, and we're still kind of digging into this, but it turns out that the district's October enrollments are lower than the end of year enrollments. And so I think that actually accounts for some of the year-to-year fluctuations. It might not account for the projected increase that we might see in the military presence, but it accounts for some of the fluctuations that you have as a community that actually I think are higher than other communities. So the good news is that I think with that data, we'll also be able to make at least a slight adjustment to enrollments. Again, this is all information that we've shared with the demographer, so they have to take another pass at this. But for the most part, these are good pieces of information to add to the puzzle, and will only help us make sure that we're building this for the right number.
One question that comes to mind when I hear the 10%, they never really defined it over what period of time. And I think that's an item of concern, especially you hear some of the rumblings down at the waterfront.
Yeah, and again, the challenge is that we've shared some of the information that we've heard. The demographer is I like to say it's part science, part art, but the part that's a science wants data, and that's been challenging. So we'll see. We're still working to see if we can get any hard numbers on that, but that is the challenge with that part of the projection.
You know, I'm wondering if it would help if we had the count of military housing in Middletown given to them. Would that possibly be a factor that they could use? Because again, we have no clue whether people are coming in with kids or without kids in school. You know, it's a crap roll. We really don't know what's going to happen from year to year.
When I hear 10%, I think in my mind, federal funding too, to help in some way. So that's 10% over 5 years. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of kids.
And I'm hearing that the War College or one of the schools over there has a capacity of 400 students. Right now, they only have 100 and, don't quote me on this, but 130, 150. And I'm hearing that they're pushing to, the federal government is pushing to fill that class and bring that enrollment for the War College up to closer to capacity.
Did you know if we saw, because I saw in my experiences in the schools and stuff, a dip in the international students, obviously from COVID,
Right.
right?
They're back now.
But they're back now. So what was that number difference? Do you guys know?
I don't know that on the public sector. I do know that, you know, with what I deal with, I'm seeing a huge increase in English language learners. I'm seeing children coming from all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's gonna, you know, those students coming into our community and our district is going to make a difference when you see the ELL program and how we're going to support those students as the time goes on. I think that's where hopefully Rosemarie would be able to talk to the captain of the War College and hopefully be able to get some kind of information over the course of the next few months of what their plan is, so that we have an idea. And again, as you said, Ed, we don't know if they have children or not, but at least we'd be able to have some more defined numbers.
Well, we already know we've got NOAA coming, all the Atlantic ships from NOAA, and they're building a separate pier for them. They used to put them on north side of Pier 2. Now they're building their own piers. So, you know, what does that mean?
It's going to bring in contractors too, not just military families.
It sounds like you guys are addressing this though, and continue to talk to Rosemary, correct, on that? Matt and Manuel?
Yes, we are. Okay, so I will move to the next one. Just a quick update. We've done geotechnical borings on the site. They did a grid of 16 borings, really on the area of the former drive-in, and went down to 16 to 21 feet. Installed as part of that 2 groundwater monitoring wells, one at the high point and one at the low point. So those will allow us to continue to observe the water levels. But what we've observed so far is at the high point, it's about 10 feet down. At the low point, it's about 7 feet down. And we'll see how that changes over time and over the seasons. And the good news is that the soils appear to be suitable for conventional shallow foundations for the building. So nothing that should be unique and costly to the project.
When do you think, Matt, the final report, the stamped report, will be ready?
I would imagine it's going to take them about a month to get the stamped report. We do have the boring logs. I think I made those available to Ed Brady.
Yep.
But the actual report will probably take more like a month.
Okay.
We've also been coordinating with the town on working with Rido on the Quidnick Avenue improvements. So in particular, working to try to get ahead of water line connection that will have to be made for the new building. So as they're replacing the water line in Quidnick Ave, the idea is to create a stub off of that to the location into the site where we would have the new water line coming in. And that is projected to be at the entrance to the old drive-in. So we've been working with Sean and Robert Hanley to come up with the size for that and a location. They're also working on getting us some of the design plans from that project so we can see what the roadway changes are and try to coordinate as much as we can now ahead of time.
That's scheduled for paving, I believe, very near future. So we'd like to get that done probably before November.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close on getting size information. Our engineer is just checking with Newport Water to see if there's anything that they would have that would influence that sizing.
The current Gaudet service in a pinch could be used. It's a long ways away, but you could still track that from the Gaudet entrance. I believe there's a fire and a service there.
Hot
Right.
box. There's a hot box there.
Yeah, hot box there that we could use if need be. I
Right.
don't really like the idea, but that's okay.
Right.
It's the
There,
far Run to get to the building.
Yeah, I know it's a long run.
there was some talk about we could even use that to create a loop if that was what Newport Water or the town wanted. But at the minimum, we would come off of the old drive-in entrance with a new line.
We also have the service on Turner Road. I don't know how
That's-
big that is.
I don't think that's large enough.
I'm saying as a loop.
As a loop.
Yeah,
You could come down Columbia Road any day now.
Well, it's not that bad.
so I think that's, oh, and lastly, I had a 2-week look ahead for the design team. So we're looking to see if the pre-K through 5 planning study, which was presented to you last time and then presented to the school committee, is ready to be approved. We are working to finalize the demographics report. We'd like to get that wrapped up next week if we can. We're continuing to look at the space program and how we can realize efficiencies in that to get the square footage down. We'll be doing that over the next couple of meetings with them in the next 2 weeks. And then we're continuing to look at the conceptual layouts for the middle high school as we get the demographics number finalized and the space program kind of closer to a completion. On the site end, so we're starting to work on the geotechnical report. As I said, that might take a month or so. The wetlands, we're going to have the consultant out there hopefully next week to start delineating the outline of those areas. We also are preparing to get our geoenvironmental consultant out to start their phase 1 site investigations. Then lastly is the water line in coordination of the Quidnick Ave street work, which I just talked about. And then in addition to that, we're looking ahead to scheduling a sustainability visioning workshop, or charrette as we sometimes call it. And we'd like to do that in mid-May. So we're talking with Rosemary about the appropriate group to be invited to that, the size that we're targeting, and what time of the day would be
Can you
best.
just describe what that is, what the sustainability visioning workshop is?
Yeah, it's to bring to you all of the issues that are encompassed under the rubric of a sustainability, which is, of course, about energy conservation and efficiency, any renewables that could be a part of the project, but also the larger issues of sustainability, which have to do with waste, materials, and health, student health in particular. So there's a lot of issues there, and as an architectural firm, we have a lot of expertise that we want to bring to you to kind of help you understand what they are. From that, we would then come to an understanding of what are the things that are your priorities, so that we, as we work on the design of the project and are addressing all of the sustainable issues as we can, know how to focus or push the envelope on certain areas that are your priorities. And so part of this will be creating kind of goals out of the visioning workshop that will guide us through the early phases of design. Then there would be a second workshop in a later phase in schematic design, so probably later in the year, that would focus more on what are the strategies that we're going to utilize to address those goals that have been established.
Is there anything in a town, Sean, that is going on concurrently to like sustainability efforts at all? Do you know? I'm just thinking, Matt, like this, I think this should be a broad almost discussion as well. I know it's based on the school buildings we're proposing here, but is there anything going on at a town level too that could kind of pigtail onto this? I know there's energy programs, things like that. There's different programs that are out there, but
I don't think so at this time. We have the energy aggregation program, but that's sort of outside of the construction. We are looking at purchasing streetlights, but I would imagine a lot of that equipment is going to be replaced as part of the infrastructure work in the parking lots. I really don't see
Right.
much at this time, other than, the coordination with the entrance down at Quinnick Avenue, which isn't really sustainability, but just trying to work smart.
yeah. Okay.
So Matt, I think the question comes to be is right now, the demographics is the biggest issue we have that's still out there that could possibly slow down the process of our schematic design.
Yes. Yep. So that's why we're really targeting next week to get that finalized, so we can move forward with certainty about at least the enrollment number and how we think RIDE will take that and include it in the stage 2 report.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. I think you covered item 4 and 7. Derek, is that considered to be the consultant's 2-week look ahead? Is Derek on here as well?
No.
Oh, he's not. Okay. That's our consultant's 2-week look
Yep.
ahead, right? Okay, cool. Thank
Everybody.
you. All right. So the next item is update on the educational plan and survey responses.
Manuel's on.
Yeah, that's me, and I have something to share. So I will also share screen. All right. Okay. So good evening again, co-chairs of the school building committee, members of the school building committee, and members of the public. My name is Manuel Cordero. I'm the educational facility planner. The great and wonderful thing about the way that we have approached this is that we're working in parallel with the design team. So Matt already gave you a kind of good overview of where we are with some of the program pieces. So I'll share with you some of the planning that we've done, as well as an update on the community survey. So as a reminder, this work has been structured around a few forms of engagement. We mentioned earlier, Matt mentioned earlier, that we're holding weekly programming meetings, and that those have been instrumental in helping us understand what is happening in your schools and what needs to happen and what your aspirations are for teaching and learning in the future and how Spaces support it. That the last time that we spoke, I believe we were just in the midst of faculty focus groups. We have now completed both the high school faculty focus groups on the week of March 27th, as well as the middle school focus groups. There were 2 visits, and the high school was done over the course of 3 or 4 days. As you will recall, last time I shared updates on the faculty staff survey, as well as the town council and school committee survey. Today I have an update on the community survey that went out. It's now closed. And then I have also a brief update on student engagement. I just had an opportunity to meet with representatives of the high school student government and can share some of the feedback that students gave us as well. So I won't delve too deep into this because it gets pretty granular very quickly. But the teacher focus groups were structured kind of a similar work flow as we did with the administrators, where we had a set of boards, Miro boards, or in some cases when we did it in person, we had a screen but also printed out versions, and basically went through spaces and got feedback about each of the spaces. And again, we're meeting with pretty much every teacher in the high school and the middle school because we did it as part of their professional development time. So got really, really great participation. So all of that information is being gathered and distilled, but has already informed the work that we're doing in the educational program. And you saw some of it already embedded in the work that Matt shared with you earlier. With regards to the survey, we got about 150 responses to the community survey. Again, this is, we got it over the course of 2 weeks. We've talked about whether in the future we might want to do another one, and certainly that's a possibility. We might want to think about the timing of that in terms of what questions we want to ask next. But at this point, I'll give you an update on what we heard. This gives you a sense of who was answering. Again, this adds up to more than 100% because we asked folks to identify in multiple ways if they wanted to. So if you're a parent and alumnus, you could identify that way. But you can see that for the most part, we got a great response from parents, and you know, we have a more direct line to communicating with parents, so that might make sense. We, in terms of folks responding, we actually asked if it was applicable where their student or youth attended. So this gives us a sense of you know, who was responding, and you can see the kind of not applicable on the right, which captures all of those people who are just participating because they are interested, not necessarily because they're a current parent. We asked a similar set of questions, and so I'll share some of the responses. You might recall that we asked teachers and staff about favorite spaces and places. Community members responded pretty enthusiastically around outdoor spaces. That might have to do with the fact that they come into contact with them more, they use them more, and are more familiar with them. But you'll see in a moment, a little bit later, that that point about kind of athletic fields does resonate with community members. So keep that one in mind because I'll come back to it. And then you'll see some of the other categories: playground, outdoor spaces, classroom, gym. And then we also just captured a few of the other write-ins. Certainly, folks still feel strongly about the planetarium, and then folks identifying with the Learning Center, I assume at Forest Avenue. These are some of the quotes, again, around favorite spaces. You'll see here the fields at Gaudet meets the needs of the community. My wife and I used the tennis courts at Gaudet, so there were actually a lot of responses that kind of leaned that way. And then there was a variety of responses about different spaces like the gym, the art classrooms. You'll notice maybe my favorite is the bottom left. Somebody, I think, was taking it with their kindergartner. So the answer on the bottom is library is my favorite place because I like to pick out books. So I love it when we have people of all ages participating. And in this case, obviously we did. In terms of least favorite spaces, you can see here, a lot of people felt like the cafeteria or cafeterias. Again, remember, people are identifying with different schools. This is all aggregated. We can disaggregate this later and look at, what if somebody was identifying with a specific school, but it gives you a kind of general sense. Interesting that the hallways jumped out. You guys might recall that was something that teachers and staff talked about. Hallways and classrooms as something that needed kind of rethinking, and so that's got good news because that's part of what we're doing here is rethinking some of those spaces and how to think about the hallway differently. We also asked this question about spaces, educational spaces that we would like to prioritize as part of this work. The welcome and safe entries. I think safety is top of everybody's mind, and that makes absolute sense. Folks were asked or allowed to pick several answers here as well, I think up to 3. Community members responding and also wanting assembly and community spaces. So that also rated fairly highly. But then the next kind of grouping is things like SEL spaces, collaborative and breakout spaces, dedicated art and music, and specialized learning spaces are some of those categories that people gravitated towards. I do want to point out that in the write-in, we had a couple of people point out universal pre-K as a space type, and that's useful to hear, as well as technical programs, which I would put in the kind of CT category, but I also wanted to highlight that. We asked folks about what was the biggest opportunity with the middle and the high school, and again, by now that I have a mix of kind of qualitative and quantitative, so this gives you the kind of color to the picture. We had folks talking about building with all learning styles in mind and safety, a unified campus that offers opportunities for peer mentoring, dynamic curriculum experiences, state-of-the-art facilities, planning for the future. Love that. To build an appropriate auditorium and showcase performances. And you'll see the CT programs come up here as well, STEAM and CT, so that kind of project-based learning, as well as thinking about flexible spaces and furniture. So that quote on the bottom, really thinking about spaces for collaboration. In terms of biggest challenge, I know that some of you on the building committee are straight shooters and you like straight shooters, so I included that one in blue in the middle. I thought that one captured it really well, and there were several of those definitely in there. It's the money, duh. That's the challenge that is on your community's mind. So if I could make that one a little bit bigger, I might. But I also wanted to capture some of the other things. So certainly a few people responded keeping the middle school and high school separate. So even though an opportunity that you saw a moment ago was thinking about ways of mentoring, there is a kind of strong desire to think about separate academic communities. And I should share with anybody listening from the community that that is something that we are thinking about. And hopefully you heard it in what Matt was sharing. There were concerns about spaces like the cafeteria, especially the scheduling of the cafeteria. So if you're listening, we are thinking about those things. The cafeterias will be separate. There was a lot of concern around that.
Manuel, I just want to add on that though. You know, something interesting from the Saugus tour when talking to the principal that was showing us around there. Same concern came up there all the time. And then what they found there actually is there's a lot of concern about the separation. And then when they finished it, there are some shared spaces there and that concern like went away like immediately as soon as the schools were completed. So I
Sure.
just, it's definitely a topic here that's going to be very important, but at the same time, I think, you know, we do have to take advantage of some shared spaces here in some ways.
Absolutely, yes. No, and I think that's why I showed it as an opportunity and as a challenge. It is, I want to make sure that we hear what people are worried about, but yes, I absolutely agree. There is a wonderful opportunity here, and I think the community recognizes that opportunity. So I think it's a real balance of thinking about the places where there's separation and the places where the community can come together. I also want to point out that on the bottom right in green, you know, I think they're also just people thinking about the history, and I know that it's something that this committee has talked about and has come up previously. So, you know, thinking about continuity and what does continuity mean in the context of new. So, you know, I think that's a good kind of identified challenge for us to keep in mind. Sorry, the graphics are not great here, but I did want to share this. When we asked what space or physical feature is most symbolic of Middletown Public Schools, this was not a quantitative answer, although if I had known, I might have structured it that way, because I will say that 80%, this is a write-in, 80% of the respondents, maybe a little bit, maybe in the 70 to 80% said the Gaudet athletic fields as like important and symbolic Middletown Public School feature. So just something to keep in mind. Again, I mentioned it earlier, like that's something that people feel connected to and want to be able to use. So keeping the kind of ability to have folks enjoy the district's athletics fields is an important thing to think about. And then just a couple of other things that came up a few times as well, the wave and the planetarium. And then we also wanted to make sure to kind of ask the question across the grades. So we did ask a question about thinking about the pre-K through 5 as well, and asked what are the kind of opportunities at the pre-K through 5 level, and got a great set of responses. And in some ways, I wish I could share more of those with you, but you know, I think folks were thinking about the opportunity to kind of bring some of the grade levels, the elementary grade levels, back together. So there was some kind of interest and excitement about that, about creating specialized spaces like the special ed spaces, collaborative spaces, and pre-K spaces that are kind of suited to that age level. And then I guess also the opportunity to kind of for operationally thinking about some of the district's resources, interventionists and whatnot. So there's a kind of opportunity there for teachers and interventionists to maybe work a little bit more efficiently in a shared building. I think I just have one more, or these are the last two. So we asked what type of community spaces community members would prioritize in the planning of the new middle and high. Auditorium and gym and athletic fields. You can see got a kind of great response, but auditorium certainly got a really, really strong response. So good to know and good to keep in mind. Again, remember that we're asking community members, so they're viewing it from their perspective as well, but I think useful to know what the community is thinking about. I also included some of the write-in answers, including things like, because again, safety is top of people's minds, I want to kind of keep that present, but also point out that some people also said, well, that community space is great, but the priority is academics. And then finally, the last question that we asked had to do with the pathways. And we wanted to get a little kind of read from community members about what the fourth pathway career cluster might be in the future. And we included both or some of the categories that we've already been talking about that have been in conversation, but also give an opportunity for write-ins. So you can see that marine trades came in at 32%, got the kind of biggest response. Business at 22%, hospitality, tourism 16%, agricultural 9%, and fabrication 6%. And then we got a kind of variety of answers in the write-in, including arts. Some people saying like all of the above, let's do it all, let's do more. So that gives us a sense of where people are in terms of the pathways. The last thing that I wanted to share is that I had the great pleasure of meeting with representatives of the high school student government yesterday. And it was just lovely. And I wanted to share with you some highlights. I kind of shared very briefly some of the process. They seemed to know a fair amount, but also had a lot of really good questions. And also wanted to offer their thoughts. So I tried to capture some of the thoughts. You'll see them here. They wanted outdoor learning spaces, a variety of spaces to support different types of work. They felt like they didn't have enough of those. They were excited about the auditorium. They shared that their current classrooms feel cramped. That some of their teachers need more writing surfaces. Actually, that was one on behalf of the teachers. They definitely need more outlets, and the students illustrated it to me by showing me where they were all plugged in the room that we were in, and it was all kinds of jimmy-rigged connections. So we kind of had a laugh about that. To connect back to the conversation earlier about sustainability, the students are super interested in that. Several students kind of like chimed in about how that's going to be integrated. So it might be interesting to think about folding them into some of those workshops, if that is an opportunity, or thinking about how to get them involved. And then there was a hot debate about lockers. And we even took it to a vote. I'll just share that most of them don't use lockers, or at least most of the student government don't use lockers and did not see the need for them. But we debated it a little bit. It was a fun discussion. And then they just had a ton of questions, and I just listed some of them here. Super smart questions. They even got into financing with me. So they really wanted to understand how these are financed and reimbursed. And so really great. I'm actually going to go back and meet with the AP government group that is working on a survey for students. So I'm sharing with them some of the surveys that we have done, and they're going to develop their own survey to share with students. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to share some of that with you later. And so that's kind of the update of the kind of work that has been kind of flowing into the planning. And as you know, and we've already talked about, so I don't have to talk about, Matt shared with you that where that's all kind of going to. And the point that I wanted to make with this slide more than anything is that this is all tied to the demographics, and we've already covered that. So as soon as we have that target population, a lot of the gross square footage and individual square footages will start to fall into place. So with that, I'll thank you all and open it up for questions.
I just have, if someone from the community wants to still do this, like, can we do a link off our site, Don? Like, to this survey, like, is there, I'd like to continue. There was a website that was created for the north end of Newport when they were going through a lot of their planning. Amy Fader shared it with all of us at one point on this committee, and it was just an opportunity online where people could continue to add comments, suggestions, things like that. I just want to make sure we have that as well. So I don't know if Manuel, if like your survey is locked now, or we can still take in more.
It is closed, but we can open it. It's super easy to open, and I mean, there's not necessarily any harm in it. I mean, obviously everything that I just shared of you might shift, right? Like some of the data might shift, but I'm happy to kind of update that.
So from a website, agenda topic 9, can we hold off the discussion and
sure.
then discuss the future?
Yep.
And go from there. Okay.
Yeah, and maybe Manuel, because you kind of crafted some of these surveys for different groups, right?
Right.
So maybe it's more just general feedback. We have to provide that, something like that for the
Yeah, I think
community.
that might be more appropriate. And when Dr. Heath gives the update, we'll show you what we've been working on.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on this topic?
Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you all.
All right, our next agenda item is update on the approved master plan for grades pre-K to 12, along with district administration and maintenance.
Any questions? Everybody satisfied with what we approved? Ed, do you have any further comments on it? Okay.
All right,
We're going.
good on that one. We covered the consultant's 2-week look
Excuse me?
ahead, so that's item
Do we
number
need to
6.
take a formal vote or anything, or?
You did the
Oh,
last.
we made a
meeting.
recommendation. Okay, so that's all we need. I didn't know what the process were. We made a recommendation to the school committee. Did they take a vote or something? I'm just trying to,
The school
Unders-
committee heard a presentation at their last meeting and
Okay.
they vote at their next meeting, I understand.
Yes.
So we've already done what we need to
okay,
do.
so we're complete. Okay, thank you. That's all I
We couldn't
wanted.
vote on it all on the same night, so we had to hear it, and then it'll be on the next agenda.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We covered number 7 already. Like I said, number 8, update on consolidated schedule and milestone calendar.
Justin.
Hi, Justin Bernard from Colliers. The schedule is still being refined. It's not ready for publication. One thing I can say is we are still on track for a draft 2 ride by June, and with the formal submittal later on in the summer.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Number 9, update on rework of building committee website. Hand it over to you, Don.
Okay.
I'll defer to Dr. Heath. Right.
No, absolutely. So, thank you for allowing us to speak on this. So to rehash kind of where we started with the update on the building website, the committee had asked if there was any opportunity, whether it be having school students involved at the school, updating the website, or maybe making it look a little bit more visually appealing or accessible to the community. So we took that and at the high school level, intertwine that with our senior capstone project experience. So we have a handful of students who, even as we come down the home stretch here, really kind of don't have a project or have maybe some interest in certain things related to the web, but don't really know or haven't put that together yet. So I thought it was a great opportunity to include some of the students once again on the project and really kind of involving themselves in a meaningful way. So we currently have 6 students with the hope of getting up to 8 students involved with learning Google Sites. Some of them at varied levels of expertise. Some of them have never seen it before. Some of them have a passion for it and do all kinds of really cool, fancy things. I kind of am overseeing the group. And what was really nice about this was, in addition to having some sample sites shared, which I'll project in 1 second, we did have a meeting with Don and Tammy and myself last Friday at the high school to really talk about what potential things we might want to include, including like interactivity, visuals, pictures, easy accessible updates that people can learn extremely quickly. So that if, hands did have to change or individuals did have to kind of step in and update the site, it's not a huge learning curve really for anybody. So it's one of the big reasons why we went with Google Sites, besides the fact that it's free. So that simplicity of design is really something that, while it limits in certain areas, it's really helpful for that interchangeability. So
And just to add, this is to replace the existing site, which is kind of,
Yeah.
we're kind of handcuffed at what we can do with the existing site that we have.
So it's still gonna be a button from the MPS site.
So right now, there's a
to
button
this site.
from the MPS site that goes to the one page.
Yep.
It'll be replaced with this eventually. So everything that is currently on that page is already ported over to this new one.
Yep.
And at some point, this new one will replace the old one.
So for the tech people, Tim, am I able to connect to the screen here?
Before you do that too, can we also why can't we on the town website, couldn't we just supply a button that goes to the same location? Because there's people that go on the town site that don't go on the school site.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's something we can talk. I mean, I've been in contact with Matt Shealy all the time. He's been doing mostly the town side of things.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point, I mean, if you want to put a button on the town one, I mean, there's no reason not to.
Well,
right?
you can go to the town when you go to the Milltown Public School site.
Right, and then get
you
to it,
go.
right.
I'm just wondering if at some point we want to add a links,
Yeah, and right now, I think
direct link from the town site.
yeah, and the stuff that Matt and I mean, he's been focusing on the town business stuff. I've been focusing on stuff that's channeling through us. So I kind of we're kind of almost mutually exclusive at this point. I don't know, at some point, do we figure out how to merge some stuff? I don't know. It's something we can talk about in the future.
Great. So I think we're all set. So what we have up on the screen, excuse me, right now is our current building committee website here. This, as Charlie had mentioned, is linked to the Middletown Public Schools homepage under the facilities tab. So you can see there's a list of members and things of that nature, some links to application, support and documentation, etc. Some of the sites that were shared as inspiration to what we may want a new site to look like. And again, this is the one page, as you see as I scroll through the screen. This is what we have in place right now. Some of the inspirational sites include one that Warwick Public Schools had. This is made with Google Sites. You can see the pictures, contact information, clickable links to agendas, which in this case takes us to a Google Drive, etc. Another site that was expressed as being of interest was Westport. This was a school that we toured as a joint middle high school that's fairly new build, You can see once again, a little bit different on their homepage. This was not made with Google Sites. This was made with a pay website service. And again, once again, you have the links, you have the separate pages, home pages, etc. You have a site that Don had forwarded over with a project that he had worked on previously, with some of a little bit more options on the homepage here, a little bit different format of a site, a little bit more visually appealing. And then finally, I had added to the mix my favorite educational website of all time. It's a private school in Colorado that I know little to nothing about, but I absolutely love their website and just the dynamic interface. There's a lot of these options that are extremely high cost that you're going to use with a private web design, but you can mimic many of the things such as mouse overs, a little bit of movement and things of that nature, and some of the menu options and things of that nature you can do for free on Google. So that being said, it takes us to the site as it looks right now. And you can see some of the progress that students have made in regards to, we have placeholder images doing something of an image carousel in the front right now. These are pictures that are taken from current situations that have happened recently, along with building committee tours. These may or may not be final pictures, but it gives you a placeholder and a feel for what that could look like as the pictures auto scroll. As we scroll down the page, I'm keeping some notes for our students here along with the inspirational sites. So as they work through the process, they all have editing rights. It's cool and really neat to see. You'll go to a page one day and you'll see some things moved around and some things that don't look quite right. And so watching the students kind of learn real time as I kind of monitor, it's really kind of an exciting process. You can see again, there's some things that we've added in, including links to meeting minutes and agenda. I bring that up because that's actually the most recent project that we started collaboratively together on Monday. And again, knowing that the icons are probably missized at this stage and things of that nature, clicking on something like an interactive link, and rather than having that initial one page, having some drop-down menus with accessible links for meetings, which are fairly simple to put up. So students worked hard with me to be able to put these types of things up. So that was our most recent success. And as you see on the editing page, just working through some of the design features, the mission statement for the committee and things of that nature. And then there are pages that we haven't touched yet. So really borrowing from the Google folder that's been provided by the committee with everything from meeting minutes to agendas, to pictures, to informational documents and images that can be shared up in creative ways. And the students and myself, we're kind of elbow deep in this right now. So this will continue to progress over the next week or so. We'll see some significant progress. And yeah, really exciting project that seems to be moving along nicely.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. All right, anything else on that topic?
You were talking about, well, you want to get back to the live first portion of this?
So that's number,
Yeah, that's next.
Next one. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Good segue. Number 10, review a live broadcast of building committee meetings.
So I met with David Anisi from the IT department, and just to get an understanding of the difference between the sorry, let Tim fix this. Okay, thank you. So right now, the way it's set up is they just set up a Zoom meeting for the consultants. It basically goes out to them. We're not even copied on it at this point. What he would recommend to do, because of the way it's managed and the way you can control users, he said you'd rather go to a webinar instead. But his personal opinion was to stick with the way we're doing it now. He questioned the need to go live. I guess it's really the question of, do you want to get public input in the meeting like the town council does now, where you look for people raising hands? I know now we're kind of limiting it to the agenda topic. So I guess it depends on what the goal is of the committee and who you would like to be able to call in to the meetings to go live.
Yeah, and the way the town does it, I mean, they still have to fill out a form, submit it to the clerk, so we'd want the same thing.
Right.
I personally, I have no problem with it. I mean, I want
As long
public
as you
input.
can manage that.
Correct.
And manage the ability for people to fill out a form, which the town has a website to do now, which we would have to give them some means to do that. I think we just need to talk through how you want to work it logistically. That's all.
Yeah, because all the other town meetings right now, they're at the town hall, obviously. So even like the planning board meetings, those are all live broadcast on YouTube, right?
no,
All that needs to happen is Zoom needs to be set up as a webinar.
Correct.
Yeah.
We don't need to have the public participation. We can simply broadcast. So,
Well, it's just
mean,
that
I-
right
I
now
would
we
just-
allow public comment.
given the amount of time we've talked about this, is I would just make a motion that we ask the superintendent to run Zoom so that it broadcasts live.
Yeah, all I'm
just-
saying is that, Sean, is that right now we allow public input. So do we allow it for people online? That's all that's the
Yeah,
only-
no,
the
it's a
only really
valid point,
question.
and then
I don't
we've
disagree.
consulted on this, and like we technically, this type of meeting that we're at right now, we don't even really, we don't have to provide public input. It's
Agreed.
not the type of meeting that is required for that, but we welcome it here in person. I don't see a problem with broadcasting as a webinar, but if you want to have public input, you should come to the meeting and fill out the form and get up and speak. at it.
Believe me, I'm the one who brought this up.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you what the feedback was.
No.
His feedback was the school committee doesn't even go live. Why should you? I'm just relaying the message.
Yeah.
I'm all for going live. I'm just,
Okay.
my only question comes down to is, the value of allowing our consultants to zoom in. I do not want that to be impacted by anything that we do.
Correct.
That's the most important thing from my standpoint. Because it saves a lot of money right now because they're not traveling from Cambridge or everywhere else to come meet with us.
And that's the purpose of of the setting up the meeting now. We don't even, like I said, we don't even share it with us. We share it with the consultants. So, yeah, it's really,
So why can't we just do a webinar and still, the consultants can still
As long as it
talk
doesn't
and,
impact them.
and make presentations, and then anybody has a link in the public could just go to that and watch the meeting.
and then the moderator, such as Tim, would manage if somebody needed to talk. The logistics are a little different. That's all.
I think we have to, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in. I think we have to be careful of, with the public, input right now. We have to ensure that we stick with the agenda items. The agenda would have to be posted ahead of time so people would know what they would even be allowed to talk about. And the 5 minutes literally would have to be like the town hall with the timer going. Because otherwise what could happen is this meeting could go from an hour to an hour and a half to 4 hours. We do need to be careful of that. And I think Charlie makes a good point. We're not trying to exclude anybody's input, of course. People also have the opportunity to send emails and we have to ensure that on the website that communication link for them is available so that they can say, okay, I can't come to the meeting. How can I ask my questions and get them answered? So I think we need to ensure that is available for folks that cannot come to a meeting. But I think we need to be cautious of, and I'm not saying don't go live with questions. I'm saying either way, whatever the majority chooses, I'm fine with. I just think we need to be very cognizant about time. As we're saying, we're saving the money with the consultants. We want to ensure that the questions are going to be very specific and very on focus on topic.
Which is what part of the reason why I asked Manuel about this too. Like, I'd like, if there's got to be a platform that we can allow, or maybe we set up an email that goes to all of us here, that people, so the public can still comment at their time, at their leisure. Basically, they can go be at the beach and they can comment on what you did wrong, Don. But, so that's kind of what I do think that it isn't, like Teresa just stated, like, I think we have to be, these are all volunteers up here and we want to make sure we get public input, but this meeting is also, we have a lot of things to discuss and approve and get through. So I'm willing to allow people public input at the beginning if we keep it to 5 minutes, but I don't really want to take numerous ones online.
Yeah, and again,
That's
it's
just
really
my
more around
feeling.
just getting up the logistics. So the way that the town council does it now is, the agendas are posted to the town council website. It has the agenda, it has the Zoom link built in. We aren't posting our agendas live on the website. Ours go to the Secretary of State. They're posted there per law. We would just have to set up the infrastructure. Again, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm saying it just needs to put some things in place to make it happen.
Ours go there too.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying the link to the Zoom would be in the agenda, which would be currently on the state website. So people just need to know how to navigate there. I have a link to it, but that's it. I don't post the agendas to the website. We can do that, as Dr. Heath showed, and we are going to do that. We just aren't currently doing it. So all I'm saying is we have some logistical things to do to make it work. It's not logistically impossible. I'm just letting you know we're not just quite ready yet, but if the committee wants to go that route, we certainly can.
So we could easily then with Zoom, allow our consultants to talk, make presentations, but then also allow for a webinar that anyone from the public can watch, but they're not going to raise their hand, things like that. It's going to be a muted presentation.
Well, in the webinar, it's default. Everybody is muted until the host allows them to speak.
So that would make us then every time our consultants, but are we already doing that? Is that what?
No, right now it's a meeting, so anybody can speak at any
Gotcha.
time. So it's just
I
different
really like to
logistics.
keep it as a meeting because
Here's my thought. Here's my opinion. If we put it as a webinar and we start, and people are watching this live, which I think is a good idea, and we're finding that people are requesting through other resources, not going live, not with conversation going back and forth yet, the dialogue going back and forth at this point live, and we see how many people are actually requesting to speak. I think we need to really assess that first. And that communication could come from the public through an email or on the ability to comment from the website. And then we can assess it from there if we needed to go with a public forum on live. I think we need to be cautious of that right now.
So Don, I think, so what we do at the town is we push through Zoom and then it goes out to YouTube. So I think the two can be linked. I think maybe if David talks to Matt Wainwright, you could leave the setup with the consultants looking at, in that workspace and then publish the YouTube so that people can view it and replay.
So
it
we are
immediately.
publishing now. They get published within 48 hours now. So by Friday, this meeting will be pushed. It's on the,
Right, but what
Middletown
I'm saying is
School-
you could push from this over to the town's YouTube channel.
to the towns. I got
Live.
you.
Live, and it'd still be a meeting. We'd still be in a
Then it would be
meeting.
I getcha.
available immediately. for the
Okay, let me,
public.
how about give me
let's
one
do it.
more, I'll connect with Matt.
Talk to
table
Matt.
that
So
to-
that's, but
okay.
that's how we do it. So you
That's a
can-
great
so
idea.
On the night of a meeting, you can watch it on Zoom. or You
Right.
can watch it on the town's YouTube. It's
Got it.
available to repay, be re.
Okay,
re-
so I'll
replayed.
take one more action. I'll follow up on
Okay.
the way the town does it
It
and
would
we'll
be- it would
close
be
this.
Matt Wainwright, not Matt Schill.
Oh, got it. Matt Rainwright. Thank you.
Yeah.
But it does bring in for me a question, like I would like to provide some form of input mechanism for people. If they can't attend the meeting, they want to reach out to this committee.
And that we can certainly do regardless of whether we go live.
That's right.
I mean, that,
Right.
those are two independent things. We'll have that ability on the website. If you want to say, submit a question or submit an idea, because we're going to have we already have a frequently asked questions tab. We
Yep.
could give people an opportunity to add some questions and we can give answers.
And
So,
then thinking about answering those in a meeting, who is responsible to answer those? Are they answered within a certain time frame?
Yeah.
If lots of things start coming in,
Yep.
to figure out how that's going to work out.
All right, thank you. Last agenda item is update on enabling legislation.
So there's no update on the legislation itself. The Speaker of the Senate has been away for the last couple of weeks. There's also been the senator that passed away, so the Senate hasn't been meeting. I'm meeting with the House Speaker on next Tuesday with a number of people. So I would anticipate the bills will start moving forward. There's no great issues that we foresee right now. That's where we're at. So it's that time of the legislative session where things are starting to come together and we'll move forward. The council did amend the legislation for the $190 million. I think you, Don and and Ed were there. We did remove the restriction on the state aid so that if there was some sort of emergency, we could use the state aid to fund part of the project if necessary. So that change is up at the State House and has been drafted and will be introduced. So everything's moving forward well.
So you think we're still on track? We were kind of pinpointing in the one town council meeting I went to, we were pinpointing June.
It has
So-
to be June because that's
yeah.
when they shut down.
Okay.
It will be June at the very end.
Okay.
And you'll be pulling your hair out and I'll be miserable. So that's just the legislative session.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any questions on that? Any comments? All right, that's it for our meeting.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
On favor?
All right.